Sometimes life surprises you in ways you don't expect. And for me, one of those surprises was learning what Islam actually says about Jesus. See, a lot of folks think Muslims don't believe in Jesus. They think it's two different worlds that never meet. But man, the truth is so different and so beautiful that it really makes you stop and think. Let me tell you something. In Islam, Jesus isn't just respected. He's honored. He's loved. He's considered one of the greatest messengers to ever walk this planet. Muslims call him Isa, and they say his whole life was a miracle. Not just what he did, but even how he came into this world. And when I learned that, I said, hold on a second. You mean to tell me Islam teaches that Jesus was born without a father, born by the command of God, born as a sign to the world? And the answer was yes. The Quran says God simply said be, and he was. That alone had me sitting back thinking, because that ain't a small statement. That's divine power right there. Then I heard something that really got me. In Islam, Jesus spoke as a newborn, a baby. Now, I don't know about you, but I've raised babies. I've held them. I've listened to them cry all night long. They barely know how to breathe right, let alone talk. But the Islamic tradition says Jesus spoke in the cradle to defend his mother. That blew me away, because that miracle is mentioned right there in the Quran. A newborn child telling the world who he is and who his mother is. That's powerful. That's pure. And it didn't stop there. Muslims believe that Jesus healed the blind. He cured the leper. He gave life to the dead by God's permission. And every time I asked, they kept repeating one thing: by God's permission. See, that part hit me, because it means Jesus wasn't performing for attention. He wasn't doing magic tricks. He was carrying out the will of the one who sent him. There's something humble about that, something real. Then there's this miracle that I never heard anywhere else except Islam. They believe Jesus shaped a bird out of clay, breathed into it, and it came alive. Man, let me tell you, when I heard that, my mind just opened up. Because that's not just a miracle, that's a reminder that life and power belong to God alone. And Jesus was honored with a piece of that divine permission. But the biggest thing that touched me was this. Muslims believe Jesus was protected. They believe he was never humiliated or defeated. They say God raised him up. They say he was honored all the way through. And that says something about how deeply Muslims respect him, not just as a prophet, but as a miracle from beginning to end. And I noticed something else too. Every time Muslims talk about Jesus, there's this peace in their voice, like they're talking about someone they truly love, someone who inspires them to be better, someone who walked this earth with purity, courage, and strength. And when I felt that, I knew this wasn't just information. This was connection. This was respect crossing cultures, religions, and centuries. Let me tell you the part that really stayed with me. Muslims believe Jesus is going to come back, that one day he will return with justice, with truth, with clarity. And when I heard that, I said, wow, because despite all the differences people argue about, here's a place where Christians and Muslims actually meet. They both love him. They both honor him. They both believe he's coming back. And if that ain't a bridge, I don't know what is. So when I talk about Jesus in Islam, I talk with admiration, because it reminded me of one thing I think everybody needs to hear. Faith doesn't have to divide us. Sometimes it shows us how close we actually are. Sometimes it puts a spotlight on the beauty we've been missing. Jesus is a miracle in Christianity. Jesus is a miracle in Islam. And if both worlds can agree on the greatness of one man, then maybe there's hope for more understanding in everything else too. Maybe the Lord is showing us something. Maybe unity starts with recognizing the light that exists in each other's beliefs. And that's why I share this. Not to debate, not to divide, but to remind us that this world gets better when we listen, when we learn, when we look at one another with respect instead of suspicion. Jesus taught compassion. He taught mercy. He taught truth. And Islam upholds those teachings with honor. So whenever someone tells you Muslims don't believe in Jesus, now you know the truth. They believe in him deeply. They speak his name with love. They talk about his miracles with reverence. And they see him as one of the greatest prophets to ever walk the earth. That's powerful. That's unity. And that's a reminder that God's message has always been bigger than our divisions. Always.